What if you were the last person on Earth? Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to complete silence. No traffic humming outside your window, no neighbors chatting over the fence, no notifications buzzing on your phone. You step outside and the world looks exactly the same, but something feels fundamentally wrong. The birds are still singing, the wind is still blowing, but there's an emptiness that cuts through your soul like a knife. You call out, but only your echo answers back. You drive through empty streets, past abandoned cars with their doors wide open, past coffee shops with steaming cups still sitting on tables, past schools where children's laughter should be filling the air, but there's nothing. No one. You are completely, utterly, devastatingly alone. This isn't just a thought experiment. This is a journey into the deepest corners of human psychology, where we'll explore what it really means to be human when there are no other humans left to define us. What happens to your sense of purpose when there's no one left to serve? What happens to your identity when there's no one left to see you? What happens to hope when there's no future generation to hope for? Welcome to the most profound question you'll ever consider. What if you were the last person on Earth? Let's start with the immediate aftermath. The first few days would probably feel like the ultimate freedom. No rules, no responsibilities, no one to judge you. You could walk into any store and take whatever you want. You could drive any car, live in any mansion, eat the finest foods without paying a cent. It would be like winning the lottery, inheriting the entire world as your personal playground. But here's what most people don't realize about freedom. It's only meaningful when it's chosen over alternatives. When you have infinite options but no constraints, freedom becomes a prison. You'd quickly discover that the value of things isn't in their scarcity or their price tag, but in their ability to connect you with others. That expensive watch becomes meaningless when there's no one to impress. That luxury car becomes pointless when there's nowhere to go and no one to see. The psychological impact would hit you in waves. First comes the denial. You'd spend weeks, maybe months, searching for other survivors. You'd drive across countries, fly to different continents, broadcast messages on every frequency, hoping against hope that someone, somewhere, would answer back. You'd create elaborate theories about where everyone went, convincing yourself that they're just hiding, that this is all some elaborate prank or government experiment. Then comes the bargaining. You'd make deals with whatever higher power you believe in. You'd promise to be a better person, to dedicate your life to helping others, if only they'd bring back just one other human being. You'd realize that every argument you ever had, every grudge you ever held, every moment you spent angry at another person was time wasted. You'd give anything to have those people back, even the ones who hurt you, even the ones you thought you hated. But eventually, reality would set in, and with it would come the most profound loneliness any human being has ever experienced. We are social creatures down to our very DNA. Our brains are wired for connection, for communication, for community. Without other people, we literally start to lose our minds. Studies of solitary confinement show that humans can begin to experience hallucinations, paranoia, and complete psychological breakdown after just a few days of isolation. Now imagine that isolation lasting forever. You'd probably start talking to yourself, but it wouldn't be enough. You'd name objects, have conversations with pets if you're lucky enough to find them, maybe even create imaginary friends. You'd watch movies and TV shows obsessively, desperate to hear human voices, to see human faces, to feel some connection to the species you once belonged to. But every show would eventually end, and the silence would return, heavier than before. The question of purpose would become overwhelming. Why brush your teeth when there's no one to kiss? Why shower when there's no one to smell you? Why learn new things when there's no one to share your knowledge with? Why create art when there's no one to appreciate it? The fundamental motivation behind almost everything we do is rooted in our relationships with others. We work to provide for our families. We learn to teach our children. We create to inspire our communities. Strip away other people, and the meaning behind our actions crumbles. But here's where it gets interesting. Some philosophers argue that this scenario would actually reveal the purest form of human nature. Without the expectations, judgments, and influences of society, who would you really be? Would you still maintain your moral code when there's no one to enforce it? Would you still strive for excellence when there's no one to compete with? Would you still find beauty in a sunset when there's no one to share it with? These questions cut to the heart of what it means to be human. Are we inherently good, or are we only good because society rewards goodness? Are we naturally motivated to grow and improve, or do we only do so because of external pressures? Are we capable of loving ourselves enough to treat ourselves with dignity even when there's no one else to love us? The answer might surprise you. History is filled with examples of people who maintain their humanity even in the most isolated circumstances. Prisoners in solitary confinement who continued to exercise and educate themselves. Castaways who created structured routines and meaningful rituals. Hermits who found peace and purpose in their solitude. The human spirit has a remarkable capacity to create meaning, even in the most meaningless situations. If you were the last person on Earth, you'd likely go through a process of psychological reconstruction. You'd have to rebuild your sense of self from the ground up, finding new reasons to live that don't depend on other people. You might discover that your love for music doesn't disappear just because there's no audience. Your curiosity about the universe doesn't fade just because there's no one to discuss it with. Your capacity for wonder and awe remains intact, even when experienced alone. You'd probably develop a different relationship with time. Without deadlines, schedules, or social obligations, you'd live according to your own natural rhythms. You might sleep when you're tired and eat when you're hungry, regardless of what the clock says. You'd measure your life not in years or months, but in experiences and accomplishments that matter only to you. The physical world would become both your greatest comfort and your greatest challenge. Nature would continue its cycles, indifferent to your presence or absence. Seasons would change, flowers would bloom, animals would go about their lives. You'd have to learn to find companionship in the natural world, to see the sunset as a friend rather than just a phenomenon, to feel the presence of life in every tree and stone. But perhaps the most profound transformation would be in how you view yourself. Without the mirror of other people's perceptions, you'd have to find your own worth. You'd have to become your own best friend, your own harshest critic, your own greatest supporter. You'd learn to have conversations with yourself that are as rich and meaningful as any you ever had with another person. The concept of legacy would take on new meaning too. You'd know that everything you create, every thought you think, every moment you experience, would die with you. There would be no one to remember your name, no one to carry on your traditions, no one to learn from your mistakes. In a way, this would be the ultimate test of whether you can find meaning in the moment itself, rather than in its lasting impact. Some people might find this liberating. Without the pressure to leave a mark on the world, you could simply exist for the joy of existing. You could appreciate beauty for its own sake, pursue knowledge for the pleasure of learning, create art for the satisfaction of creation. Your life would become a pure expression of your authentic self, unconstrained by social expectations or the desire for external validation. Others might find it crushing. The thought that nothing you do matters, that no one will ever know you existed, that your entire life story will vanish without a trace, could be overwhelming. This is where the true test of human resilience would come into play. Could you find meaning in meaninglessness? Could you discover purpose in purposelessness? Could you love life even when life seems to have no point? The question of survival would also become complex. Sure, You'd have access to all the resources in the world, but for how long? Power grids would fail without maintenance, food would spoil without production, medicine would expire without manufacturing. You'd have to become a master of everything, learning to generate power, grow food, manufacture medicine, and maintain the infrastructure that keeps civilization running. The irony is that you'd have to work harder than ever to maintain a life that no longer has any apparent purpose. But maybe that work would become your purpose. Maybe the act of survival itself would give your life meaning. Every day you manage to stay alive would be a victory, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Every problem you solved would be a small triumph over the forces of entropy and decay. You'd become the sole guardian of human civilization, keeping the lights on even though there's no one left to see them. The emotional journey would be unlike anything any human has ever experienced. You'd cycle through grief for the entire human race, anger at whatever caused their disappearance, fear about your own survival, and eventually, hopefully, acceptance of your unique position in the universe. You'd have to learn to be comfortable with silence, to find peace in solitude, to discover joy in the simplest things. You might develop rituals and routines that give structure to your days. Maybe you'd read a book every week from the world's great libraries. Maybe you'd learn to play every instrument in every music store. Maybe you'd paint portraits of the people you remember, keeping their faces alive in your memory. Maybe you'd write letters to the future, hoping that someday, somehow, someone would read them and know that you were here. The question of hope would be central to your psychological survival. What would you hope for? Rescue? Contact with aliens? The discovery of other survivors? Or would you learn to hope for smaller things? A beautiful sunset, a good book, a moment of peace. The ability to maintain hope in the face of absolute hopelessness might be the most human thing of all. And what about love? Could you still experience love when there's no one left to love? Perhaps you'd learn to love in ways you never thought possible. Love for the earth itself, for the animals that share your world, for the memories of people who are gone, for the potential of life that might someday return. You might discover that love isn't just something that flows between people, but something that can fill the entire universe when given the chance. The nights would be the hardest. That's when the silence would be most oppressive, when the loneliness would cut deepest. You'd probably stay awake as long as possible, afraid of the dreams that might come, afraid of waking up to remember all over again that you're alone. But eventually, even the nights would become manageable. You'd learn to find comfort in the stars, to feel connected to the vastness of the universe, to understand that you're part of something much larger than yourself. After years of this existence, you might achieve something remarkable, a kind of enlightenment that comes only from complete solitude. You'd understand yourself in ways that are impossible when you're constantly influenced by others. You'd know your own thoughts, your own desires, your own fears with crystal clarity. You'd become the most self-aware human being who ever lived. But you'd also understand the fundamental truth about human nature. We are not meant to be alone. Every day of your solitary existence would be a testament to how much we need each other, how much we depend on connection, how much we derive our meaning from our relationships with others. You'd become living proof that hell isn't a place of fire and brimstone, but a place of absolute isolation. Yet somehow, impossibly, you'd also prove that humans can survive anything, that we can find meaning in the most meaningless situations, that we can create purpose where none exists, that we can love even when there's no one to love us back, that we can hope even when there's nothing to hope for. This thought experiment reveals something profound about the human condition. We are simultaneously the most social and the most resilient creatures on Earth. We need each other desperately, but when we're forced to, we can stand alone. We derive our meaning from our connections, but we're capable of creating meaning from nothing. We are defined by our relationships, but we're also capable of defining ourselves. If you were the last person on Earth, you'd discover that you're both more fragile and more powerful than you ever imagined. You'd break down completely, but you'd also find the strength to rebuild yourself. You'd lose everything that makes life worth living, but you'd also find new reasons to live. You'd experience the deepest despair any human has ever known, but you might also touch a kind of peace that comes only from complete acceptance of your place in the universe. The real question isn't whether you could survive being the last person on Earth. The real question is what that survival would mean. Would it be a triumph of human spirit or a tragedy of human isolation? Would it prove that life has inherent meaning or that meaning is something we create? Would it show that we're capable of transcending our social nature or that we're forever trapped by it? Maybe the answer is all of the above. Maybe being the last person on Earth would be the ultimate human experience, containing within it all the joy and sorrow, meaning and meaninglessness, connection and isolation that define what it means to be alive. But here's the beautiful thing. You're not the last person on Earth. You're reading this right now, which means you're part of a community of millions of people who are also contemplating these deep questions. You have the opportunity to connect, to share, to love, to be loved. You have the chance to create meaning together, to find purpose in your relationships, to discover joy in your connections with others. So the next time you're annoyed by the noise of traffic, frustrated by the demands of social interaction, or overwhelmed by the complexity of human relationships, remember this thought experiment. Remember how precious it is to be surrounded by other people, even when they're difficult. Remember how lucky you are to have someone to talk to, even when the conversation is challenging. Remember how beautiful it is to be part of the human community, even when that community is imperfect. The last person on Earth would give anything to have what you have right now, the simple, miraculous gift of not being alone. Don't take it for granted. Cherish it, celebrate it, and maybe, just maybe, use it to make the world a little bit better for everyone who shares it with you. What would you do if you were the last person on Earth? More importantly, what will you do now that you're not? The choice is yours, and unlike the last person on Earth, you don't have to make it alone. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think would be the most challenging aspect of being the last person on Earth? How do you think it would change your perspective on life and relationships? And most importantly, how does this thought experiment change how you see your current life and the people in it? Don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking content that explores the deepest questions about human nature, consciousness, and what it means to be alive in this strange and wonderful universe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest explorations into the mysteries of existence. Remember, you're not alone in wondering about these big questions. Millions of people around the world are thinking about the same things, searching for the same answers, trying to make sense of this incredible experience we call life. And that's the most beautiful thing of all.